Welcome to this month's episode of Conscious Connection, where soul meets soul. Each month we sit with a beautiful soul sharing their unique medicine, magic, and message with our world. Join the conversation. Welcome to Conscious Connections, where we highlight beautiful souls from around the world who are sharing their unique magic and their light with humanity. I am your host, Deborah, and this is a space all about truth, transformation, and divine connection. Each month, I like to sit down with visionaries, with healers, change makers to explore the wisdom that awakens freedom in the soul. And today, in this great month of November, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Donna Lee Reed, the founder and executive director of Home4Me Inc. It's a nonprofit dedicated to supporting teens aging out of foster care. A former foster youth herself, Donna turned her pain into purpose, becoming an author, a pastor, and a life coach who helps others find healing and hope in the world. Name one of the top 5 remarkable women in the country and honored with an official Hollywood star. Donna continues to remind us that faith, that love, resilience can rebuild any life. Welcome to the Fear to Freedom Project, my sister. Thank you so
Well,
much for coming. I
thank you.
appreciate
Thank
you.
you for having me.
Yes, you are welcome. It's November, and November is National Adoption Awareness Month. Now, what does that personally mean to you? As someone who has lived in the foster care system, what does that mean to you this month to celebrate that and to honor national adoption?
It means so much because, again, like you just said, being coming from the foster care system, many people think that you have to adopt someone or there's no way they can get involved. But what we let them know is if you can't adopt someone into your home, you can adopt them into your heart and make sure that they're okay. And so we turned Adoption Awareness Month into something everyone can participate in. We have our young people that are in the foster care system, where they're aging out of foster care every single day on
Yes.
their 18th birthday. And many people are unaware that there's over 20,000 teens that age out of foster care every year in the United States. And on that day, if they don't have life altogether, which they don't, then many of them are ending up homeless.
Yes.
20% are going to end up homeless on their birthday. Another 20% will experience homelessness within the first year of aging out. 71% of girls will be pregnant by the age of 21, and 60% of our males are going to some kind of way touch the criminal justice system, not because they're bad, but for some form of survival. So it is terrifying to know that these numbers are out here and many are unaware, but then when they become aware, they're not sure what they can do. And again, we say, and especially during this month of adoption awareness, adopt them into your heart and make sure that they're okay. And so that's what we're doing at Home for Me. Home stands for Hope, Opportunity, Mentoring, and Education. And we are providing those things that will let a young person that is in the system know that we are here, we care, and we're not going anywhere. And then as they get to that age out or that consistency that we offer while they're in the system so they feel safe, we are preparing them for when they age out. And for those that desire to attend college, we stand out among other organizations by partnering with HBCUs so that any of our young people that desire to attend college can attend college worry-free. And what that means is that they don't have to worry about what's going to happen when the dorms close, when it closes for that break, because I gave you some numbers. Here's the number we really focus on. 84% of teens in foster care desire to attend college, yet only 3% enroll, 1% graduate. And that's due to a lack of support, guidance, funding, and housing. And Home for Me is making sure they have all of those so they don't have to worry except just getting that GPA and graduating.
I love that you are doing this. Speaking about home and home for me. So, Donna, I just want to let the audience know that I have been connected to you for some years and you've been doing a lot of things. You always been working in the community and offering support in the community and offering hope really in the community. And I've served your grandchildren and your children in my schools when I worked in the school system. But one of the things talking about home for me is that you blessed this home that I'm living in right now. I've been living in this home for 23 years, and you were the one who came in and blessed my home. Do you remember that?
I do. Faintly, I remember.
You do?
I remember how sweet you were and how many times we got together. And I just kept saying, girl, you can do it. Whatever it is, you can do it. And yes, we have been together for a long time.
I have not seen you in forever, but I was glad to run into you. And I thought about, wow, this home has been so good to me and the blessing that you put over it in the beginning for me and my daughter. She just turned 30 and she was 8 years old when I moved into this home. So I just have so much gratitude to you for that because this home has been truly blessed and a blessing for us. So I love what you're doing, and these numbers are staggering. And I think about, what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to college. And so I just think that that should be afforded to anyone who wants to go. It shouldn't be any barriers. And so I want to talk about your book. You shared that your book is called A Life. Life is a puzzle until you find the missing pieces. And it reflects your personal journey. I remember buying that book and reading it. Well, what were some of the missing pieces for you and how did you find them?
Well, it was interesting because at birth, my biological mother left me in the hospital, but my mother, who walked into an orphanage, me as a toddler, and said it just took one look, and she picked up the phone and called my father from there and said, "We're about to have a little girl." And so they
Yeah.
became everything that I would need in life and just a blessing. And so my mother always wanted me to find my biological mother. And I never had the desire. I never had the desire to do so. But then my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer and being older when she got me, because she was in her mid 40s and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer. And it was so new at the time that I kept thinking, not this woman. She's not going to lose her memory. And that kind. She's done everything. She's led this. She's been here. She's traveled the world. There's no way. And then when the doctor kept telling me what was ultimately going to be the process, I thought, well, what is it that she would want that she
Mhm.
hasn't already done or have? And I said, she's always wanted me to find my biological mother. And so at that time, I had just left an abusive marriage. When I aged out and left home, well, I don't even call it age out, when I thought I was grown and left
Yeah.
home at 18. And I went 1,000 miles away from home, and my mother was just so upset with me. She was like, "I just can't believe your father. I've never seen your father cry until you walked out that door. You just think you're so grown. You just go figure things out." And I was like, "What?" So that was the first time I knew what it really felt like
Mhm.
for an 18-year-old to be on their own. And I vowed that day that if there was anything I could ever do, that I would do it for
Mhm.
someone. Now I'm 18 myself, but making this vow. And so 5 days before I turned 19, I got married, thinking, well, here's a secure way for me to move forward. I always wanted
Mhm.
to, have the family and all of that. My mother always said, wait till you get married. They were only
Mhm.
mad 5 minutes, but I was afraid to call back, collect, and find out.
Yeah.
And so 5 days before I turned 19, I got married. 19 pregnant, 21st baby, 21 second baby, 22 third baby, 23 single parent. And
Mhm.
so when I ended up leaving or escaping from that marriage, if you will, I ended up going back to Connecticut. And that's when my mother was diagnosed. And I realized now I'm back here. I don't know my biological family. And if I were to ever, get into a relationship or what have you, now that I'm an adult with children, I would want to, make sure I didn't run into anybody that I knew. And then at the time, one of my daughters, because I had all girls, one of my daughters was 4 years old, and I was telling her about my mother having the Alzheimer, and she said, "Well, mommy, if you didn't come out of Nana's tummy, whose tummy did you come out of?" And I couldn't
Mhm.
answer that question. So between those three things, her always wanting me to know, my daughter asking that question, and me just coming back into Connecticut, where I'm from, I thought, let me look. So it was a missing piece, but it
Yeah.
never bothered me until I went to go ask for non-identifying information. Like they have to give you information that just says, black hair, brown eyes, that kind of thing, but they can't identify. And so when I went to go get that information, the lady at the state of Connecticut, she said, "Why are you looking?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just curious, just want to know." And so then she said, "Yeah, but why are you looking?" And I said,
Mm,
"Oh, I said, I just want to know. My mother's always wanted me to find." She said, "Yeah, but why are you looking?" When she said it the third time, it agitated me. And
mm,
I said, "I just finished telling you." She said, "Well, what are you going to do when you find it?" She said, "What questions are you going to ask? What if they open the door and they didn't know you exist and you met and divide a family? What
mm,
if they need something? Are you going to be available to give it? What if they open the door? Are you going to want something from them? Why are you looking?" So
mhm,
it agitated me so bad that I said, "You know what, lady, I don't even want to know." And I left.
mm,
But then I
oh,
realized I don't want anything. I'm not looking for anything. There's no voids in my life. I'm just curious because of, the reasons I just gave. So I went back to her and I said, "Ma'am, I answered that question." I said, "I'm just curious. My mother's always wanted me to find him, and I'm back in Connecticut. I don't want to take the chance of running into someone relationship wise." She said, "Okay, here's your folder." So she gave me the folder. And again, all it did was non-identify. And I began to look. And it took me on a journey that I was
mm,
so thankful that the questions were asked and that I went on because I found my biological mother. And it was an interesting journey,
mm,
and she had already passed away. And
mm,
so many questions had arose. Do I have siblings? What are they doing? Do I have extended family? What's going on with that? And all of these questions just started coming to pass. And so when I did find her, and I tell a story in the book, when I did find her and she had already passed away, I realized all those questions had been buried. But I
yeah,
also found out I had a sister. And so I went looking for the sister. And this is an interesting time for us to be doing this podcast because I lost track of her 95 when I moved to Charlotte 30 years ago. I literally just found her 2 weeks ago.
really?
2 weeks ago. But interesting enough, she passed away 3 years ago. And I couldn't believe it.
Oh, wow.
Where my heart would have been really broken, I found I have 2 nieces, and they are in
Mm,
Florida, and literally, one looks exactly like her, and one
yeah,
I remember meeting when she was young,
yeah.
and so we have just
So
been
the
in nonstop communication. I can't wait to get down there to see them and to connect, and I promised her that I promised Diane, my sister, who passed away, even though, I promised her I would never lose track of her 2 girls. And so
yes.
I'll continue, to have that relationship with them. And it was interesting because the day I found her, picked up the phone when I thought I had the right number and called, and I said, "Tammy?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "My name is Donna." I said, "Is your mother's name Diane?" And she said, "What did you say your name was?" And I said, "Donna." And she said, "Oh my God, Donna." She said, "I often think of you and my cousins," and she named my girls and didn't mispronounce their
Oh.
name.
I know, right?
What? And so right then and there, it just let me know that, it was time for me to meet them. And,
That's a beautiful story,
yes,
though. Talking about finding some missing pieces, those
yes.
were good. What then if you looking back on your journey, though, because this is a Fear to Freedom project, what does freedom look like for you now, today? So, let me ask you this, what is the greatest fear that you faced or you had to overcome in that time to step fully into your purpose?
So now you mean like looking for them or just in general in my
In
life?
general, yes, in general, like to overcome fear. This is the Fear to Freedom Project. And
Yes.
that's the reason why I started this channel, this
Oh,
podcast, because I had to face a lot of fears and I'm still doing that. I mean, I
yeah.
think we face fears all the time, but what is one of the greatest fears that you had to overcome to to fully step into your purpose, your role as a change maker, your role as a pastor, your role as a leader in the community?
It's a good thing. And I'm so thankful you asked that question okay? Because I'll never forget standing in that telephone booth at 18, calling collect to my mother to tell her I had made it safely to Beaufort, South Carolina from Hartford, Connecticut on a Greyhound. When my mother said, "You think you're so grown? You know, I never seen your father cry till he walked out the door. You think you're grown? You go figure things out," and hung up. Now, I say this again, I repeat this. I was too afraid to call back, collect. So that moment was defining for me because now I feel like I'm in the world by myself. And what am I going to do? And how am I going to do it? Because
Mm,
everything that I knew in life that I could fall back on was on the other end of that phone. Everything I could fall forward to, meaning success and good, no, was on the other end of that phone. And I remember standing there with that receiver in my hand and tears came to my eyes. And I literally was afraid to step out of that telephone booth. I was afraid to hang up that receiver because that was going to be like that disconnect.
yeah.
But what kicked in was determination, determination to be successful and to be everything I was raised to be and taught to be. Now,
Mhm.
my mother was a civil rights leader, and we grew up in an all white community. So every time I stepped out that door, I stepped out that door to prejudice and for the odds being against me. But
Yeah.
I had a mother that said, "You can do anything that
Mm,
you set your mind to do. Always look a person in the eye and
yeah.
always look for your yes.
Yes.
You are no better than anyone, and no one's any better than you.
Yes.
Always show and demand respect. And if
Yes.
they say no to what you're asking for, ask them why and then move on to your yes." And so by
Yes.
being raised by that encouragement, when I realized, wait a minute, you're determined to be successful and you already know you have the foundation from which you were, which was embedded into me all of my life that I could do anything. I could do
Yeah.
anything I set my mind to. And if
Yeah.
somebody says no, you move on. Move
Yeah.
on to your yes, because no means next opportunity. So if
Yeah.
that's not the way, then you go to the next opportunity and get
Yes.
what you need. So I stepped out that telephone booth determined. So anytime I faced something, I was determined that you are just, or this is just, or it is just an obstacle that I need to get over. But I'll tell
Mhm.
you the main person I found on this journey that let me know that anything I fear, I could kick in with what I know best. And that was my faith. When
Yeah.
I met the Lord on this road
Yeah.
and had found out that his name was Jesus and anything I needed, anything I asked for, anything I desired, that I could do it because he would continue to strengthen me on the journey. That's when I knew that anything I feared, to not let that fear show, but let faith conquer that fear. And
Yes.
literally in my book, I share towards the end that that was the missing piece in my life because I went
Mm.
a lot of my life without knowing who he was.
Yeah.
But when I wrote the book, and you at the bottom of every chapter, there's a scripture that shows he was with me even before I knew him.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so now, and even then, when I would come upon a fearful moment, and those fearful moments were were many. Feared the times where I didn't know how I was going to pay the mortgage. I can remember back in the day when we could send off a check, and if it did bounce, you still had a few more days to clear it. I sent off that mortgage a many a time, believing that I was going to get what was needed. I stepped out on faith
Mm.
over 30 years ago and started my own business before the word entrepreneur even existed. I was a business. Companies wouldn't even send things to my house because it was residential. And so the fear of not making ends meet used to kick in a lot until I realized and looked back in my rearview mirror. I've never been late on a mortgage. I've never been late on a car note. Every time I look at my score, my credit score, that's like 835. Every time I look at that score, I see the amount of years, over 30 years, and it says exceptional. The
Yeah.
amount of, paid on time, exceptional. And let me tell you, the times where I didn't know where it was coming from, didn't know how I was going to feed my kids and things like that, to see exceptional now was putting faith over fear. knowing that God would come through. I'll tell
Yeah.
you another thing, being a single mom, right?
Mhm.
And then, in the 4 daughters, right? There were times, I promise you, I
4
didn't
beautiful daughters.
they also didn't know how I was gonna feed them at times. They have no idea the years I went without a coat to make sure they had one. Remember, I came from
Mhm.
Connecticut, but
Yeah.
even down here, they have no idea the sacrifices that I made to make sure that they were okay. And then I looked back one day and I said, it's an interesting thing because I love people and I love having people, over. I love, fellowship and things like that. I love motivating, encouraging, and let's get together. Let's do this. I love playing games, family time, that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
God has always connected me with family. People that I don't mean biological. I mean God connected me with family. And so I thought back one day, this was some years ago, on how many times I wasn't even sure where the next thing was going to come from. But whenever I would have events, I would always say, everybody bring something. And when I would look at the times where whatever was here would last 2 and 3 days after, say, oh, God, you're just amazing. And I'm talking about from folks that could cook.
Yeah.
I wasn't the best cook, but my kitchen has always been open to
Yeah.
anyone, who does. So when I just think about the ways that he provided,
Yeah.
at one time, all 4 of my girls worked at Pizza Hut. When I tell you, if nothing else, we had a pizza in the house.
Yes. Yeah, no, that
One of my daughters, she has worked at every fast food restaurant you can think of, the one
yeah.
whose kids that you have taken care of, Takesha. I'm telling you, we never went without food.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they never realized how down to the barrel we were,
Yeah.
on things.
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
always, always
Yeah.
supplied, and in the little things, wash machine lasting and shoes and clothes, mine coming back in style,
Mhm, mhm. Well,
because
you're a true testament of
yeah,
fear to freedom. You are the poster woman for fear to freedom and faith over fear. You are, and you have always been the same way. I can remember that whenever you would come to the school for your
mhm,
grandson, you always had the same message, and it always resonated. Are a pillar of determination
yes,
and being grounded and offering hope, not just to your own family, but to the community and to the world. So I am so honored that you are here to tell your story. I want to ask you about if you could speak to your 16-year-old self, what
mhm.
would you say to her today?
I
If you
said,
had to
"Girl,
go back.
you gonna do this. Girl, you're
Yeah.
gonna be anything you set your mind to." Why? Because again, that's why I say to this day, we have to talk to our kids, not about them because
Yeah.
and not at them.
Yeah.
Because whatever we tell them, they're going to believe it. They're gonna
Mhm.
believe it, and then especially if we support them in it, even if we can't do it. We know our girl, I know you can do that. I'll give you an example. One day I was about 11 years old, 11 or 12. My mother came home with my uncle's clock from off his wall, plug-in clock, right? And she said, Donna, she said, your uncle's clock broke, but I told him that you could fix it. And so I said, oh, okay, And so she said, well, there it is. It's right there. And so I sat down. Now, mind you, I'm going to fix the clock because my mother said, and then told my uncle that I could fix it. So it must be fixable. So I sat down. I literally took out every little tiny screw, every little piece, every little thing. I laid it all out and then I put it all back together the way that it was, right?
Mhm.
And so it took me a long time, but I did it, laid them out so I wouldn't forget where everything was and everything. And I put the clock back together and we plugged it in and it didn't work. And I said, Mommy, I don't know what's going on. I said, but it didn't work. This brings me to tears every time I think of it. She said, I knew that clock wasn't going to work, but I knew you would try it. She
Yeah.
said, I knew you would try it. In other
Yeah.
words, I knew that if it was any chance of being fixed, you
You
would
could
do it.
do it.
You would try it.
Yes. I
And
love that.
I never forgot that. When I was young, I used to tell my mother, she used to say, what do you want to be? And I used to say, I want to build my own furniture. Please don't ask me where that came from. But I used to always say, I want to build my own furniture, right?
Mhm.
And she'd say, okay. literally being creative with my hands and creative and gifted in my hands, right? There was nothing I couldn't set my mind to doing. So when I ended up leaving the abusive marriage that I was in, right?
Mm,
Left at 23 and ended up back in Connecticut. And by the way, my three girls, my ones I gave birth to were born in three different states. Okay.
mhm,
And so then I came back home. And when I came back to Connecticut, I realized I hadn't gone to college because that's what my parents wanted me to do. And I went to go get a job, but it wasn't enough to pay a babysitter. And everybody said, you need a college degree. And so I realized I'm going to have to go to college. So I went in, I got on welfare. And I'll tell you right now, I was so embarrassed about being on welfare. I
mm,
was like, this is not me. So what I did was I started doing crafts. Anything I could think of, I made it. And then I would do craft shows on the weekends. My girls were underneath the table and I was conducting business on top of the table. I made flower arrangements. I did ceramics. I did macrame. I made magnets. You name it, I could make it.
yeah.
And so,
I
and so
remember tea bags.
Yes, and then tea bags was a vision later on. So literally, I handcrafted my way off of welfare.
Yeah,
And that's when I knew, I said, you can do anything because people thought that's what I did for a living. And of quite naturally, then this is what I do. And with the creativity, and then I'm back in college and I took business back in college. And I remember a decision that I made one day because I knew I was creative and innovative. And so I would make these different items and I'd have them on the table. Displays would be beautiful. And people used to walk up to me and say, oh, who are you selling these for? Because and I looked younger than what I was. And people used to think I was babysitting my kids, even though they were my kids. And I remember saying, getting upset with people. And I would say, no, I made these. And I would get these funny looks. And one day this couple walked up to me right after one of those situations. And they said, oh, these are nice. Who are you selling them for? I said, the Feed the Reed Foundation. And they said,
mm.
okay. And they started buying. Why? Because I got to feed these kids that are underneath this table.
I know
Feed
that's
the
right.
Reed Foundation. And they started buying. So then I had to set aside, don't worry about what they think or say, long as they're buying your product. Don't you worry about
Mhm,
who they think made it or you got to prove you made it. Don't even worry about that.
yeah.
Sell your product. That was, business as far as I was concerned. And then, like the question that you had asked me, what was my
Well,
biggest
look,
fear?
I wanna ask you this. So, all of the things that you have gone through, it's not an accident or a mistake that you would name one of the top 5 remarkable women in the country. When you were bestowed that honor, how did it feel?
Wow, it was beyond amazing. It was beyond amazing. But I do want to finish my biggest fear.
Mhm,
Okay. So when I was doing all of these things and taking care of the kids, doing the business and taking care of both my parents, because remember my
mhm,
mother
mhm,
had Alzheimer. The one thing I did, Deborah, was every night I would soothe myself with a drink. And
mm,
then the next thing I knew, I couldn't put it down. And I realized
mm,
one day that that alcohol had more control over me than
control.
I had over it. And I remember that one day my daughter wanted to go to a recital from her school. She put on her little white shirt, her little black skirt. She had her clarinet in her hand. And I said, what's going on? And she said, Mommy, my recital's tonight. And I had started drink because I would drink at night. Nobody knew. My friends
Mm,
and nobody knew that I drank. And I couldn't go because I had started drinking and I was afraid to drink and drive. And I'll never forget the disappointment, the hurt on her. And that's
mhm,
when I realized that it had more control over me. But here's what I want to say. My biggest fear was not knowing how I was going to get past that. Literally being an alcoholic. What
mm,
was I going to do? I've got these children to raise. I had smoked and drank for 20 years. Had smoked to the point where I literally couldn't take a flight of steps without gasping for breath. If I
mm,
walked a certain length of time, I was gasping for breath. And I literally began to make arrangements, funeral arrangements, thinking this was it for me.
Mm.
and then making cassette tapes for my girls, writing them letters to encourage them after I was gone, the whole thing. And then I remember one day after I met the man I said would be the missing piece in my life. And he said, "Come to me as you are. Cast your cares upon me, and I will take them." And
Yeah.
when I heard that God was a deliverer and Jesus Christ would take everything from me that was hindering me from moving forward. I was at work one day and I was smoking a cigarette down in the basement. This is when I lived in Connecticut. And I remember putting my hands up to God and I was crying. I had a cigarette in my hand. And I said, "God, you don't hear me, do you?" I put the cigarette out and I said, "God," and at this point, I'm thinking it's too late for me. But
Mhm.
please, for my kids. And I said, "I don't want to do this anymore." Literally, the hour that I asked God, I tell a story on how it happened. But the very hour that I asked God to take cigarettes and alcohol from me, He delivered me from them both. And not
Yeah.
only did He deliver me, but He said to me at the time, through a woman, said to me, "God said to tell you that you hid it from Him for a long time. I mean, hid it from others for a long time, but you could never hide it from Him." He said to tell
Yeah.
you that He just saved your life and that your testimony would make a difference to many and to multitudes. And I'll never forget that very hour, the taste of alcohol and cigarettes were both taken from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
About 10 days later, I was in my backyard and I was standing at my deck and I had a big backyard. And I
Mhm.
just heard this voice say, "Run fence to fence to fence around your backyard 10 times." And I was like, 10, I can't even, what? And it felt like something was pushing me off. And I took off running. And
It
when
was your ancestors.
well, it was Jesus. I believe it was God. And
Mm.
so when I got back to that deck, God showed me my new lungs and said, "I healed your body and told you to run on." And I just thank God. And so there was no way I could ever be quiet after what I know He did for me.
Well,
And
the
so that
power
was
is all within you. The power has always been within you, because God is within us as well. So I know I love your story. It's compelling. I got a couple more questions to ask because I'm running
okay.
out of time. You have an event coming up. That's the ultimate motivational vision board party for teens. And that sounds really good. What impact are you hoping to create with this gathering?
Our young Yeah, a lot of our young people, they're limited with the outlet that they have to say who they are and express
Mhm.
what they would like to do. And vision boards actually do that. But the
Mhm.
reason why it's the ultimate motivational vision board party is so that we have people come in and they wear a name tag as to who they are. And they, just walk around, encourage the young people. And then the young people will wear a name tag saying what they want to be. And it allows those connections to take place. But the biggest thing is just motivating these young people that whatever you set your mind to, same way I was raised and taught, whatever it is, you can accomplish it. And we're
Yeah.
here to make sure that that happens. So if anybody knows any young person that's in the foster care system, any young person that really needs that motivation,
Mhm.
really any teens that need that motivation,
When's the event? November
it's
what?
November the 15th, November the 15th. Or if they have already aged out of foster care or they're a young adult in college and need that motivation or even a trade, have them register. Go to the
Where is
website.
it gonna be? Yeah. Where is the event gonna be held at? And
Well, it's going to be here.
for our
Mhm.
listeners, we're gonna have, that information. I will have it in the show notes, but where is it gonna be?
So it's going to be here in Charlotte, and we're careful about giving out addresses.
Okay.
So if they go to the website, Home for Me, and that's the number four, home4me.org, then
Mhm.
they'll see the information on there because we have to be careful about who comes, so everybody has to register to come.
Okay, so you have to register for this event. That would be good for our teens. Also, I saw there that if you want to volunteer to encourage the teens and be an inspirational to help them to envision what it is like to create their boards, that you can do that as well. So, how can our listeners support Home for Me?
Thank you for asking that. So that day is also going to be a day where they can drop off in essentials or donations for young people. The major thing that they need are gift cards. We ask that they be like $25 increments of gift cards, but if it's any other size, just let us know on the gift card what it is. But we're talking about to from grocery stores to Walmart to Visa cards to they need essentials, they need everything. And, and here's the thing, our young people, we provide them with a lot, but it's what we provide them with. A gift card will allow them to get
Mhm.
what they want. So even
Yes.
going to the website as a donation and making a donation, and then they're saying, it's for a gift card or just a donation to the organization. The other thing is, if you have a skill, a talent, we need help when it comes to administrative. Our organization is run off of volunteers. So
Okay.
from administrative to being on site, to volunteer, we
Mhm.
always need volunteers. We always need donations, of course. And then if there is someone out here that feels like they could be a good board member, a great board member to Home for Me. Again, passionate about our young people, any resources someone may have and say, let me share these resources with you all. All of those things are impacting them. And once again, if someone is unable to adopt someone into their home, which right now in these days, it's a challenge to do so. Foster parents are minimal these days. There's such a
Mhm.
shortage. However, you can adopt them into your heart and know that they are okay. We have college students that need everything on an ongoing basis. We make sure they have everything that they need. And so with that, you can support a college student. And remember, these young people need from a haircut, from helping to get their driver's license, helping with their FAFSAs. I mean, there is so much help that a young
Mhm.
person in college needs, but them knowing that somebody is there, they care, and not going anywhere is major. And then one more area, success coaches. A
Okay.
success coach says we're going to guide a young person through their academic year. So whether that is their last 2 years of high school or 1 or 2 years of high school or any of their years of college, it says they're going to make sure that they're on track for success, because a lot of our young people that are in foster care are being shifted from place to place. So that
Mhm.
means they could be moving schools, and then there's no one checking to make sure, wait a minute, what about that class? What about that grade? We have kids that are in college that like their class might not be available. They're what they need to graduate. We have one young man right now, and they're saying he's going to have to wait till May. We're like, no, he doesn't have to wait till May because he's done everything till December. And you told him this last semester that he would have to wait till the following semester because you don't have anyone to teach that class. Well, you find a way to give him a grade because
Mhm.
we're not going to have him do another semester because of that. But a success coach would be able to stay on track with that
And
for,
support
with
him. Yes,
along with
advocate too. Yes, to
advocate.
be
We need
yes,
those
be an
advocates.
advocacy.
So please,
All right,
that
so
could
you
be
heard it right here at the Fear to Freedom Project. If you want to support Home for Me, that's HOME, the number 4, me.org for success coaches. You can send some $25 gift cards. You'll be able to take those to the Vision Board event on November the 16th. And all of that's going to be written in the show notes. So yeah, support this nonprofit. I have a lot of friends, they text me and call me and say, who can I give money to? And how can I
yeah.
volunteer?
Please
So
make
here you go. You got it right here. Home4Me.org. Give, support, serve. This is what we are here for. We are not here on earth for ourselves. We are here to be in service for others. This is for humanity and for our teens. I love that. All right. So, got a couple questions that I like to ask everyone, all of my guests. What are you most excited about in life right now?
I am so excited because we are working on a major project and we're looking to announce it through the month of November or
Okay.
by the end of November, a major project that
Okay.
will solve a national solution
Ooh.
for our young people aged out of foster care, where they will live after the process. And then I'm also excited that just God is good, life is good, and we don't fear what's happening in the world today, but we trust and believe that God has got us. So all of this that's being said, we're going to cut this, we're going to take that. We serve a God say, I'll supply every one of your needs. according to my riches and glory. And I believe if we pray, we won't have to worry about anything. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too, y'all. Don't believe the hype out there, okay? Stay off the news. Quit watching CNN. If you don't even believe the hype. Stay
Right.
grounded. Keep yourself grounded. The universe is abundant. All right? See, come from a place of abundance, not fear, all right? And the
Yeah.
last thing this is a question that I'm going to be asking all of my guests who come to my podcast. What
Okay.
does freedom mean to you? What does freedom mean?
So for me, the free, and this is interesting because I call the shots, if you will. And I just believe that we can all be in position to call the shots in our own life
Mhm.
because I call the shots. And I literally have worked from home before that was even a thing, 35, 40 years, right? So my kids have always thought, my mother doesn't work. People used to say, "What's your mother do for work?" And they used to say, "Oh, my mother doesn't work." And so that meant I could be there for them.
Yeah.
My grandkids think I'm just a stay-at-home grandma, and
Yeah.
that means I can be there for them. So any
Yeah.
school plays, any events, anything that they're doing, and listen to this, I have 22 grandkids. I'm talking
Ooh-wee.
about grandkids, my grandkids, and then I have my bonus babies that God has
Yeah.
given me through foster care. But I have 22 grandkids. And
Yeah.
whenever they pick up that phone, it is my prayer to always be free for them. And so that
Yes.
is what excites me. And I'm just thankful and grateful for what God is doing in my life right now, what
Yes.
He's doing in your life, and just what He is doing, period. And if we all love it,
Yes.
we'll all be excited.
Yes, we love it. Thank you, God. Give
Yeah.
honor to God. All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Conscious Connections. And I hope today's conversation has nourished your spirit and
Yeah.
reminded you of the power that you carry within you. Everyone has the same power in their spirit. Be sure to subscribe, like, share this episode with someone whose soul could use a little light. We all need that. To stay connected with me and our growing community, feel free to visit feartofreedomproject.com and join our mailing list. Thank you so much. Until next time, peace and love. This is where fear ends and freedom begins. Peace, everybody. Take care. Thank you, Donna.
Indeed.
Thank you for coming.